The Gary Hart watch party began early and ended late. Hart's Oklahoma supporters were hoping their man would finish a respectable second.
The NBC News projected winner by a considerable margin, Senator Gary Hart of Colorado.
They were wrong. Hart whipped Mondale soundly in New Hampshire. The winner's supporters wanted to savor their victory.
83%.
Members of Hart's meager Oklahoma campaign staff reminded the partiers their candidate needs at least a couple of delegates from Oklahoma's upcoming Democratic Party caucuses.
And whip those people up for Gary Hart. He's the only guy that can beat Ronald Reagan. People know that, and that's what we have to do in the next 2 weeks. And that's what each and every one of you, more importantly, has to do in the next 2 weeks. So I just encourage you to get on the phones. All right. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Katrina. I'm a volunteer with the Mondale President Campaign in Oklahoma.
There was less clapping and more telephoning at the Oklahomans for Mondale campaign headquarters. Most of the volunteers were not even aware the Mondale machine had gotten stuck in the snows of New Hampshire. The well-oiled Oklahoma Mondale machine kept canvassing Democratic voters. Now, more than ever, their candidate needs to capture Oklahoma's primary delegates. Mondale supporters shrugged off the defeat and set their sights on the future.
We came in tonight thinking there were 8 viable candidates. As it turned out, there were 2. Walter Mondale, we held our vote, and Gary Hart, he picked up a lot of the rest. Over the next 3 weeks, there's going to be some 25 primaries and caucuses, and we're looking forward to the matchups.
Oklahoma supporters of both candidates will be beating the political bushes in the next few weeks. Hart's campaign people will be trying to gain momentum. Mondale supporters will be trying to keep from losing it. Scott Wallace, Action 4, Northwest Oklahoma City.
I'm gonna hook, step.
It was 21 weeks ago when Oklahoma City re-entered the police training business. 32 trainees were accepted for the academy out of 1,200 applicants. Hours of practical instruction and classroom sessions finally brought them to today, graduation. Family and friends of the 94th Academy came to take part in the ceremony. It's almost been a year since the police department graduated a class of rookies. But this only marks the end of phase 1 of their training. They will now spend 1 year with a field training officer before instruction is finished. The newest members of the force were reminded of what police work is all about.
It's easy to get into the frame of mind that, by George, all those bad guys are out there and I'm going to get them, and you forget what your basic mission is. And that's to help people due to the fact that you genuinely care about your fellow man.
The 94th class lost 4 trainees for various reasons before graduation day, and some rookies may end up leaving the department during the next year, because officials say they are not just looking for certified cops, but rather good police officers. Ed Stewart, Action 4.
With the state Democratic caucus only 9 days away, the son of Walter Mondale is the closest thing Oklahomans have seen to a presidential candidate recently. And there are no guarantees any of the top 3 plan to come here before Super Tuesday. Mondale himself hasn't been to the state since November. John Glenn's organization in Oklahoma has been hit hard in recent days, following reports he was abandoning the state. Campaign leaders deny that, but the fact is Glenn was scheduled to be here today. He canceled, and no other visit in the next 9 days is planned. Gary Hart was scheduled to make appearances this Tuesday and Wednesday. He canceled out too, preferring to concentrate on other states. But his Oklahoma campaign staff thinks he could still make an appearance.
Gary Hart wants to win Oklahoma, and we are doing everything in our power and his power to do that. And we fully expect to win a substantial number of delegates. If we don't win all of them, we don't win a majority, we're going to get some delegates for Gary Hart out of Oklahoma.
I guess the next logical question is, if it is very important, why hasn't he been here?
Well, simply because we didn't need him.
Campaign leaders for the top candidates downplay personal appearances because Oklahoma is a caucus state, where they say organization is more important. But the head of the state's Democratic Party thinks campaign stops in the state could make a difference.
If candidates were here more, there'd be a higher turnout, but they're going to concentrate on those primary areas where that turnout is a really essential factor in the end result.
While the organizations of the three major candidates try to downplay the importance of an appearance by their candidate, they all concede privately they are spending a lot of time on the phone trying to get those candidates here. Their feeling is one appearance in the next 10 days could have a big impact on Super Tuesday. Jeff Fowler, Action 4 at the state Democratic headquarters.
When the Senate voted on the fuel tax hike late yesterday, they needed at least 25 supporters for passage. The final vote was 25 to 21. Senate leaders said they would try and corral 7 more votes over the next few days so that the tax would go into effect immediately if it passes in the House. Today, Senate leaders said they may not be able to get the extra votes they need, so the bill may go to the House with a thin margin of support. Some people blame that margin on the year. Half of the Senate members face re-election this fall. But in the House, every member faces a ballot in November, and House Minority Leader Frank Davis says tax hike supporters have a lot of lobbying to do before they can win.
There was a informal poll taken yesterday of House members, and there were 58 who expressed opposition to the tax increase proposal. That's pretty strong opposition at this point.
It looks pretty good at this point. We're not there yet, and I don't want to imply that we are, but we're getting closer, and I think that we will have the votes to pass the fuel tax.
Barker says he did not begin lobbying House members until this morning, but he expected to talk to 30 representatives before the end of the day. No word yet on when the House may vote on the tax hike. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4, at the state capitol.
Last Friday, hundreds of angry residents gathered in Luther to protest a proposed 700% rate hike in their Oklahoma City phone service. Luther is connected to the city by a foreign exchange line. It's a flat fee charge and allows calls to be made to the city for less than long-distance costs. But divestiture of AT&T will push the foreign exchange rate up dramatically. A business now paying $96 a month could face a telephone bill in excess of $700 a month by July 1st. New customers are already being charged the increase. Residents here voiced their complaints to Corporation Commission officials, and it may have paid off for them. The commission is now considering a hearing to look into the controversy.
We're prepared to wage war against Southwestern Bell. This is not going to be a profitable situation for anyone involved. Southwestern Bell isn't going to generate any income from us having our phones removed by not being able to pay these bills. In fact, what's going to happen is people throughout the state of Oklahoma are going to have to pick up and pay the revenue that they expected to get from foreign exchange users from these 2 small communities in Oklahoma County that are being discriminated against.
Corporation Commission officials feel time restrictions during the Bell hearing last year didn't leave them enough time to spend on the foreign exchange issue. The interim clause in the increase gives them the opportunity to correct problems, and Luther and Harrah residents say they have one on their hands now. Kevin Ogle, Action 4.
The political ads unveiled today by the state Republican Party are already stirring up controversy one day before they're supposed to hit the airwaves. The 2 commercials attack alleged corruption among Democrats, and one, Republicans admit, is aimed at former House Speaker Dan Draper and State Senator Mike Combs.
One top Democrat in the legislature arrested by police for driving drunk. Another involved in a bribery scheme.
Republican State Chairman Nancy Apgar says the ads are merely trying to promote a 2-party system in Oklahoma, and she defends them as being fair.
I think that any time that people generally are concerned about something, that someone has the right in our country to comment about it and do something about it. So if that's fair, then this is fair.
Bribery, vote fraud.
But the reaction of state Democrats is much different. We showed the spots to State Democratic Chairman Tony Borthwick, who said he was shocked by the ads. But he says he thinks they could backfire on Republicans.
As a matter of fact, I think they've done something that we've been trying to do, and they're probably going to make enough Democrats mad that we'll increase, probably double our participation in precinct caucuses, just because people realize now what kind of campaign the Republicans are going to run next November.
We're moving back into the old corrupt politics.
But now the Republicans are having trouble getting the ads on the air at all, citing the commercials as being potentially libelous and in bad taste. Officials at 4 of 6 television stations in Tulsa and Oklahoma City say they will not air them. 2 other stations will run only one of the 2 commercials. Contacted late this afternoon, Ms. Apgar said the party may go to court to get the spots aired. Jeff Fowler, Action 4.
With education problems getting worse, do we want these people in the...
It's a new kind of high-tech sound for Dolly Parton, a sound that may not endear her to her million...
It's just something I wanted to do, and I have to be responsible for my own decisions, and I can't really worry that much about who I offend because I have to be the one that makes those decisions, and it's something that I thought was a smart thing to do for me.
Gary Hart hopes his newfound popularity will migrate west from New England. A few hundred supporters and just as many news people braved blustery winds to hear Hart talk about his so-called new ideas.
The statesman of the future, Gary Hart.
The crowd warmed up when the candidate unveiled his plan to help family farmers. Hart claims his program sets him apart from his opponents.
We can only do that through an approach called tiered price supports, which are in fact a new idea that no other candidate has proposed, to direct the benefits of the farm programs of this country where they ought to go, and that is the moderate and small-sized family farms of Oklahoma, Colorado, and Kansas.
Hart's visit seemed designed to give him maximum media exposure. The candidate spent less than 2 hours on Oklahoma soil. In fact, he never left Will Rogers Airport. But every major news organization in Oklahoma was there. Recent polls show Hart ahead of Mondale with Sooner voters. Gary Hart wants to make sure things stay that way, at least through next Tuesday. Scott Wallace, Action 4 at Will Rogers Airport.
Thank you all very much. Thanks to Bethany Nazarene College.
Frankie Laine is one of those names that's been around the music industry for a long time, famous for singing the songs that bring on the memories.
You see the shelf pass overhead, you'll find the feather beside my bed.
He's doing it again. This was just the warm-up. He took some time out between numbers to talk with us about what he's been doing with his life lately.
So keep a moving, man, don't
Mostly into the recording end of things these days. We've got a new mail order operation going now with a new album that is comprised of rare collector items, tracks that were never in an album before, that I made even before That's My Desire became a hit back in 1946 and 7.
Frankie Laine is in town only for one night. The first show is at 7 o'clock this evening, and then another one at 10 p.m. It's guaranteed to take you back a few years and will probably be an enjoyable trip. Terry Cook, Action 4.
According to statistics, there will be 6 million more women vote in 1984 than men. So we would like to encourage the women to register and vote because they really will have a vote. You know, it hadn't been too many years ago that women did not have the right to vote. We now do, and so many do not take advantage of this.
You need to notify your mortgage company. Yeah, right there. Yeah, just yours.
Anyone who does file and have an appropriate homestead exemption on file gets $1,000 off the assessed valuation of their property. And depending on the tax rate within the school district that they live in, that could make up to $100 or so difference in their tax bill.
Prison officials call it a crisis. They say budget cuts and hiring freezes have left them with nearly 400 fewer prison workers this year than last. But because of the continuing inmate boom, more than 1,100 additional inmates are crowded into the system. They say the system is failing, and they fear if something isn't done soon, conditions will be worse this summer than they were last summer when prisoners rioted at the Connors Correction Center. Corrections Director Larry Meacham told the Senate Appropriations Committee today that he's kept quiet about the situation because he didn't want inmates or the general public to think he couldn't handle the problem. But he added the problem has grown to the point now that immediate action is required.
Because that has happened in such a short period of time, the officers are seeing 30 and 40 inmates together. They used to break up cliques of 3 and 4 and 5 because they didn't want to get together and create disruption. Now they're seeing 30 and 40, and the officers are somewhat concerned. The change has been so great in their environment in such a short period of time that they say, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? And they are frightened.
The Senate committee approved nearly $13 million more for the department next year. Meacham said he needs more than 200 more workers and $900,000 to make it through the rest of this year. A House committee has already given their approval for that. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4, at the state capitol.
Yes. You don't, Marion, can I ask you one more thing? Marion, are you happy? I mean, you don't look very happy. Are you just in shock or what?
I feel great.
I think that this case in Tulsa is much bigger
than a case involving Churches of Christ. I think it's going to affect Baptists and Methodists and Roman Catholics and Lutherans, Mennonites. I think any group that tries to maintain a standard of conduct for its membership is going to be affected by this decision.
The fact that tomorrow is the first day of spring was of little consequence to residents in Cherokee today. This rural community in Alfalfa County, just 50 miles north of Enid, was paralyzed by 8 inches of snow. Abandoned cars and trucks littered the east-west roads in and out of Cherokee, as drifting snow made many thoroughfares impassable. The motorists that did try to drive often found themselves in a ditch.
The snow's pretty bad. The roads are bad. I just got stuck helping somebody else out, and when I got him helped out, well, then I was stuck.
Highway 64 just north of Cherokee was closed for a short time today. 18-wheelers stuck in the drifts along this highway were a common sight. Alfalfa County Sheriff Delmar Kopic has been helping stranded motorists since 1 o'clock this morning. The blinding snow kept rescue efforts at a snail's pace.
I got called out at 1:30 this morning to check on a family that was stranded, and it was real hard wind and very heavy snow at that time. In fact, about 20 miles an hour as fast as I could drive and drive it safely.
Shoveling snow was the main order of business in Cherokee today, but warming up afterwards was no easy task, as much of the town was without electricity. The wet, heavy snow pulled down several power lines. Of course, not everybody minds a little snow and ice every once in a while, especially when it means a holiday from school. Tomorrow, the vacation should be over, as southerly breezes and warmer temperatures should put things back to normal. In Cherokee, Kurt Autry, Action 4.
Today's ruling by the CAB will have little effect on people flying out of Oklahoma City. Of all the airlines stationed at Will Rogers World Airport, officials say probably only 2, Air Midwest and Metro Airlines, will be forced to ban smoking. When contacted today, officials at Air Midwest said they don't think the ruling would hurt their business, since they aren't competing against the major airlines. Those airlines had lobbied against a smoking ban, and it also came as a relief to some smokers, who say an outright ban would not have been fair.
I think I could fly, an hour flight or an hour and a half flight without any problem, but I would find it a little bit difficult to go a couple of hours without a cigarette.
But non-smokers say cigarette smoking on planes bothers them, and they would have liked to see a more restrictive ban.
Well, I flew last night, and as long as I kept the vent blowing back, it did not bother me too much, but I get headaches from it, and if they do start smoking very much, it does bother me.
But even the limited ban announced today may not last long. The CAB itself is targeted for extinction at the end of the year, and if that happens, any smoking ban dies with it. Jeff Fowler, Action 4 tonight.
You know, if you've got a preschool kid in the house, there are just certain things you shouldn't have. One of those is liquid drain cleaner. Most liquid drain cleaners are clear, but they can be mistaken for water. And it only takes one sip to find out that it's not. But then, of course, after one sip, it may be too much and too late.
What happens is their food tube, their esophagus gets burned. And with liquid drain cleaners, 100% of the children who swallow them have some kind of burn of their esophagus. And that burn is like having a burn anyplace else. As it heals, it gets a scar, and it makes the food tube shrink or get narrow.
A child with a burned esophagus may have to undergo several operations to ever be able to eat again. And even after these operations, the chances are the esophagus itself will never be normal. Now, while you're cleaning out the cabinets and throwing out the drain cleaner, you might check to see what kind of furniture polish you've got. There's a certain type of furniture polish on the market with mineral seal oil in it. This oil really doesn't come from seals. It's a synthetic product.
But it's such a problem that, again, one swallow causes the oil to go down the airway, not the food tube, and it gets into the lungs and then causes pneumonia.
Like the liquid drain cleaner, it only takes one swallow. With just one swallow of this stuff, a child can end up in the hospital with pneumonia within 6 to 12 hours after ingestion. Now, next time we'll talk about what you need to do after a poisoning occurs. It's worth paying attention to. I'm Dr. Red Duke. You know, if you're in a situation where someone has poisoned themselves, either an adult or a child, the first thing you're liable to do is panic if you haven't thought it out ahead. Let's think about how to plan ahead for such an emergency. Now, you may have heard that you should give a poison victim a glass of milk, or maybe induce vomiting some way. Well, the truth is the treatment used for poison victims depends on the type of poisoning that they have experienced. For this reason, you should not treat the victim at all until you've called either the local poison center, an emergency room, or a doctor. Now, when you call one of these numbers, tell the folks on the other end the victim's age, the name of the poison, and how much you think was taken. Now, in case vomiting is the first recommended treatment, it's a good idea to keep a bottle of syrup of ipecac on hand, especially if you've got small children.
It comes in a 2-ounce bottle, and it's sold in all the pharmacies, and you don't need a prescription for it. And it's best to have that around the house.
Be sure you get a doctor's advice before you use it and how much to use. Vomiting may be the worst thing you can do in some poisonings. Just know the facts before you undertake any treatment. Take good care of these kids. I'm Dr. Red Duke.
See what I could do. I got down here and started trying to move machines out because it looked like it was going to get it for sure, and I really think it would have if it hadn't been for so many volunteer firemen, and the towns all around us came in and really helped a whole lot.
It's a very tough budget, and certainly it's not the case the legislature is trying to pick on us. We got no brickbats over there to speak of on the floor of the House. It's a case of they don't know where to get the money to finance what we think has to be available.